Okay, well, how are you doing? Well, first of all, thank you guys for inviting me to do this. My name is Londyn Skye. I am the author of the Prodigy Slave trilogy, which is a story about a young slave who is a piano prodigy. And I would say the briefest way to describe this story, it's about a young slave who two secrets really compel her into this interesting journey in her life. She has a secret friendship with her master's son and her secret ability to play the piano. These two secrets in her life end up sending her on this very interesting journey in her life. So that's what the trilogy is about. It's been out for about a year now, and it's been this very interesting, interesting journey for me myself as an author, to see the way that people react to this story. It's been a very polarizing story, to say the least. But other than that, I am a mother of two children. I have two teenage children, 18, 19 years old, and I like to playfully call myself a basic bitch truck driver. That is what I do for my career. Other than that, I would say I'm an athlete and, well, an ex-athlete, but once an athlete, always an athlete. That's how we feel. And what else could I say? I guess after publishing this series, I can also consider myself as an author. So yeah,
Yeah, it sounds
that's me in a
really cool.
nutshell, me and the story in a nutshell.
Yeah, so I guess we can get started with our questions then. What
Mhm.
inspired you to pursue writing?
It's interesting because I think the people that have read this story, they probably want something really deep because the story is very deep and emotional and moving. But it was actually something very superficial that led me to become an author. I used to do a lot of reading of romance novels, and for me, the storylines just weren't very deep. I wanted something more than what I was reading. Like some of the characters, for instance, okay, some examples. The characters were just very forgettable to me in a lot of the stories I was reading. I mean, like I would read about, let's say, a secondary character in the second chapter, and by the time I got to the eighth chapter, I'm like, who is John again? Like I don't remember who is this. I don't remember anything about this character. I didn't get a connection. There was no connection for me sometimes with the main couple. Like, why do these people even love each other? I don't get it. What else was missing from the story for me? There was like, for instance, I wanted the story always seemed to be this focus on the couple trying to become a couple. There was no extra, something that they were trying to chase together, that made it really interesting. It was just always so hyper focused on them trying to become a couple. And then I was bored by the fact that it was it, it to me, and repeatedly I was seeing this, that the only thing standing in the couple's way, right, in these romance stories was something that happened to them in the past. Like maybe were hurt by their previous boyfriend or girlfriend. And I found myself just really wanting more than that. And it's not that these stories that I was reading was really bad, but I was seeing the same things so repetitively that I just got bored and I was skipping to the naughty stuff. I mean, if you've ever read some romance, it's really kind of, it's graphically described. So I found myself kind of skipping through the pages and I was just bored, and I wanted something deeper than what I was reading at the time. And so I said, you know what? I can't keep sitting here complaining about all these authors that aren't giving me what I personally want, to read. They're obviously writing what they want to read, to write, and what they would want in a story. And I said, you know what? The only way that I can really get 100% of what I want in a story is to write it myself. And so my journey really started very superficially. It was just me seeing the same thing over and over again, kind of not remembering the secondary characters in the story. And I said, if I want to get everything that I want, I'm just going to sit down and have to write my own story. I can't keep complaining about all these authors. So that's kind of how it started. It wasn't anything really serious, very superficial.
I mean, that's a great motivation if I've heard one.
Yeah.
So, what inspired you to pursue historical fiction as a genre and select the era that you did for the Prodigy Slave series?
Again, kind of the same thing. It was like I was telling you about the stories that I was reading, right? Everything was very like superficial as far as the problems that they were having, as a couple, problems. It was like, oh, my previous boyfriend treated me bad, and so I don't know if I want to give this new Romeo a chance. Well, I said, if you cast this story, and I wanted something more serious than that, something very tangible, that if this couple is struggling to be together, they're going to have to overcome some very serious obstacles. And so I said, well, what can I do? And I thought about, wow, this would be interesting if you put a slave with a white man. Obviously in the slavery era, you're going to have some pretty serious troubles there. First of all, there are laws written against slaves and white people being together. He's a master technically. She's a slave. There's all these obstacles for them to overcome. So I just wanted something very tangible. And I felt like, all right, if we throw this back into the slavery era, then these two are definitely going to have some serious obstacles to overcome. So I was like, that's pretty much the reason why I decided to do something historical. I felt like there was a lot to work with there.
So what was your purpose in writing The Prodigy Slave? I think you've touched on it a little bit. And what do you hope readers take away from reading your work?
It's funny because I think if I hadn't yet published this, and maybe it'd been out a couple days, my reason for people reading this was just something unique and different, something for you to escape with. But after having, this book has been out, well, the entire series has been out for a little over a year now. And after some of the things that I have gone through with, people reading this book, well, not reading it, I won't even say reading it. Some people who have just looked at the cover of this story, I would say there's two things that I now want people to take away from this book. Number one, do not judge a book by its cover. And it's such an old cliche, and you think that people would know that by now, but I'm telling you, people take a look at this cover, and it is obviously this white male he's technically, I have to say that, you have to read the story to understand what I say. Technically, he's a master of this young lady who is a slave, and people simply based upon that premise, they want to dismiss the idea of reading this story, that they automatically deem this young white guy who is a master as this like immoral raping monster, right? Without getting any context of the story at all. And it has just blown my mind to go online and read all of the hateful things and mean things people have said just by looking at the cover of the story. And so, it's just, I would say that's number one, to let people know, don't judge a book by its cover. This is a story that you absolutely need to have all of the details before you can jump to any conclusions, about the story, the characters in the story. I think anybody would want the respect of, having what I like to call your life resume examined before anybody jumped to any conclusions about you. If you're a Black person, would you appreciate a white supremacist looking at you and saying, oh, you're Black, and I've already made up my mind about you based upon how you look, right? Nobody would want to be treated that way. You would want people to know who you are as a person before they come to any conclusions. And so I would definitely say that about this story. Just because you see this cover and it looks a certain way, yes, this guy is technically a master. Yes, this young lady is a slave, but you need to get all the details before jumping to your conclusions. I'm not saying that everybody's going to love the story. I'm not saying that, but at least get the information and the facts before you judge. And so I would say that's number one. The second thing I think I would want as a takeaway is the history in the story. There are some things I will admit, even this is historical fiction, the things that I have embellished, but there are things that I did not embellish. At the beginning of many of the chapters in this story, there are what's called slave codes. And, being that we're so far removed from the slavery era, I think a lot of people don't even know what the hell a slave code is. But the ones that I put in this story, there's many of them, are very real. And these are things that were once a part of the United States. Shockingly. And I think we look at the country now and we're like, oh my God, America needs so much work. And, we have this police brutality stuff and Black Lives Matter and all the things that we're dealing with as far as race is concerned. But when you look at the United States 160 years ago, and you can also look at like the segregation era. We were literally at that time a racist country, very racist, and these slave codes point that out. And so I would tell people, when you're reading this story, even though it's fictional, those parts of the story, I talk about the Confederacy and some of the things that they wanted, right? And one of the things the Confederacy wanted was that every Black person in the United States, right, was going to be, if they would have won, the southern states that they would have won, every Black person born in their country would have been subject to slavery subordination, which is written about in book 3 of this series. And so I would say read some of the history in this, and the takeaway that I would want people to take from that is perspective. Realize that, yes, we have some things we need to work on now, but look where we were 160 years ago, and how much better things have got. There's no place that you can go to buy yourself a slave on a slave auction, just on a slave block today. And to look at that and say, all right, I should have hope because we have come a long way. And that when you protest, when you have a problem with laws that you see, and there's an uprising and people come together, that things can get better. So I would say, even though this is a fictional story, those parts are actually very real. And to gain some perspective from that, and maybe to have some hope that if there are problems that you see, problems that you want resolved now in the United States, that they can get better. So those are the two things I would say. The history part of this, just continue to have hope that we can work together and improve things here in this country. And do not judge a book by its cover. Trust me, you need to get all the details about these characters before you jump to any conclusions. So those would be my 2 takeaways.
Yeah, sound important. So what is the structure of your series, and which book in the series is your favorite? Why?
I would definitely say that book 3 was my absolute favorite. It's strange because books 1 and 2, I kind of had in my mind early on, okay, what I wanted to do with this story. I had no idea I published book 2 really early on, and I had no idea how book 3 was going to end. And some ideas came to me that this book just kind of all gelled. And so like all the questions that readers might have had during book 1 and book 2 all came together, and there was just this big, everything was just final, and all the questions were finally answered in this book. And I was really excited, and my brain like allowed me. I was kind of nervous. I was like, I don't know if I have anything to give these readers to really complete this. But somehow my brain was able to manage it, and it all came together and made this. I just really loved all the love stories, the twists and turns. And I think a lot of the readers were probably like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I didn't expect this kind of thing. So I was really proud of the way book 3 turned out. I really, really like that one. And I don't want to talk too much about it because it would give too much away of this story.
So, I mean, you've mentioned that you're a trucker, and I bet those can have some pretty crazy hours, and a mother. So sounds like a lot of work.
Nights.
How do you balance writing with all that?
I don't like balance. What is that? It's better. As a matter of fact, I just finished, like I was telling you, I think I emailed you, told you my son's got a basketball tournament on, all this. I had a coach that used to laugh at me because I would bring my laptop everywhere with me. And when my son's been playing since he was like 7 or 8 years old. He's almost 18 now, but I would always take my laptop everywhere. And any minute that I had of free time, I mean, literally my son could be in practice and I'm just, let me type up my notes. My daughter could be in dance class. I'm okay, let me type up here. I have written majority of this book, this is not a joke, has been written sitting on top of pallets inside of a trailer, like waiting to be loaded, or my truck has been broke down and I have my laptop and it's on the steering wheel and I'm typing it up. So it's just been, not a joke, 5-10 minutes here and there putting this together. It took me almost 10 years to put the series together. So I wouldn't say that there's like balance. It's just any time that I could find a free moment to like the notes that I would take down, I would finally get a chance to type it up. No balance whatsoever. It's just any free moment that I could get putting a story together.
So it sounds like you've combated a lot of obstacles to get where you are.
Yeah,
So,
I
what
did.
is your advice for aspiring writers hoping to write their own book?
I would say after the year that I spent taking a lot of heat about this book, um, I would say authenticity. Be authentic. Do not worry about everybody else and trying to people please. With any art, it's all subjective. And I don't care if that is actual art, painting and drawing, or if it's music or acting, writing. Obviously, there's a different way to present your style. There is no one right way to write. Okay. And so, don't get me wrong. First of all, technically as a writer, you've got to figure out punctuation and, spelling things is important. Um, that the technical aspects, you definitely have to get that down, but be authentic in the way that you want to present your art, right? There's just no one right way to do that, and it's all subjective. And so stay true to what you want and the way that you want to present your art, and know that no matter what, you can think that you have written the greatest masterpiece of all time. There's going to be somebody who looks at your art and thinks it's absolute and total trash. And that is across all arts. So don't get too caught up in trying to please everybody, because it is impossible. There's somebody on this planet who thinks Whitney Houston, who probably most people think is a great singer, thinks her music is trash, her voice is trash. There may be somebody who looks at the Mona Lisa, art and thinks it's totally ugly, or whatever art you can think of, or people who have won Oscars and they think that they're terrible. So it's all subjective, and to not get so caught up in, oh my God, I have to please everybody. The most important thing is to stay true to yourself and your authenticity, and the people that love your authenticity, they're going to flock to you, and the rest of them, I say you can probably take the criticism, like the constructive criticism that you get from people who don't like it, and decide, do I want to incorporate this into, my art? Maybe I can present it better, because I think sometimes when you get the negative feedback, it can be something that you learn from that. But for the most part, don't be concerned about that. Just be authentic, present your art in the way that you want, stay true to yourself. If you're proud of the art that you put out, and that's the best you can do. So that's my advice, just authenticity.
Yeah, good advice. So that's all the questions that I had for you. But is there anything else that you want to add about being an author in general or about your books?
um I guess I would just repeat, this is a very oddball story. If you're looking for something very raw and deep and emotional, something that I would say is very unique for the romance genre, is to give the Prodigy Slave trilogy a try. Don't just look at the cover of the story and completely dismiss it. So yeah, it's very different. And you can read like the first 3 or 4 chapters, I think, for free on Amazon. And if you like it, continue on.
Okay, well, that's all for today, everyone. Thank you, Londyn, for taking the time to talk with me today. And for those of you watching the video, if you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.